Hello, friends, and welcome back. And this guy, this guy. Oh boy. I always say every video I've done, I keep saying that I'm super excited for this one. I've been very excited, and I keep commenting about myself being super excited. I was not excited for this figure. I had zero intention of buying this thing. Like, at all. I had no intention whatsoever to pick this guy up. I didn't put him on pre-order, was not interested. Like many people, when we saw the initial pictures of this guy, I was like, you know. But then I walked into Target and he was sitting there on the shelf all by himself. And I picked him up and looked at him and was like, huh, he's not that bad. He kind of looks okay. So I got him. Oh, but let's give this guy a fair shake, shall we? So right up front here is the packaging. As you can see, we've got nice artwork there on the side of our G1 Astrotrain and his two modes. Right off the bat, here's my problem. You look right there, and you look right there. That don't look right. That don't look the same. Also, that's his accurate shuttle mode. That's what he looks like as a shuttle. That's his accurate train mode. This does not turn into either of these, this train or this shuttle. It turns into a completely different train, similar train, but not this train, and a completely different shuttle. Down here on the side of the box, we got that nice image of Astrotrain again. Top of the box, Transformers, Le Film. Yeah, I'm seeing this Le Film on a lot of these now. This is not the first one I picked up that's had that on there. And they've all been from Target that have said that. And we got the Transformers Studio Series image of the ruins of the Battle of Autobot City. Then on the back of the box, you get your little bio right there for Astrotrain. Again, you get the image from the movie of him turning into a train. And right off the bat, look right here. Here's this train, and here's this train. You can see there's some similarities there, but that's not the same train. And then a picture of the robot, picture of the shuttle, picture of the included blast effects, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and all this stuff you expect on the packaging. So moving right along, inside the packaging in a little baggie, you get his big gun. And it's a decent looking gun, like most modern guns. It's got a lot of hollow bits on it. And you get his little small pea shooter. And we get our first new blast effect in quite some time. We get 3 of these. You can see it's got a little ball with some flame and a little trail going on it. This is cast in a semi-transparent, milky white plastic and then just painted. It does have hollow bits. And his weapons are blast effect compatible, so you can plug these in here. Boom. And he's got the little tip here. I will say that these little holes here are a little small, and you kind of have to force it to get onto the little peg tip here. But you can get it on there, and you can do that. And then of course the big new effect is his smoke trail. It is hollow, and just like the other blast effects, it's a softer, flexible material, but it looks pretty cool. Now, moving on to the figure himself, you can see, look at the details here. It's a very nice head sculpt, very good Astrotrain head sculpt, in my opinion. Going down the body, he's got lots of sculpted detail. Some parts picked out in paint that shouldn't be, and some parts not picked out in paint that should be. And going down here to the feet. And of course the big chunks of crap here on the sides. I like the contrast between these 2 different colors of purple. I think that looks really good. Gray flaps up here. Now these do come folded down in the box. You have to fold them up. And then going down the back, whoo boy, that's a lot of junk in the trunk. It's accurate to the original toy, not so much accurate to his animation model. Granted, he had two different animation models. So, one animation model had like the solid purple wings with the gray bit up here, whereas other animation model had the purple outline with the gray wings, like that. And one of them had the thrusters on the back, and the other animation model had the tail fin on the back, which is, interesting. He's also got tab slots here. See that? There's nothing that tabs in here. There's no tabs in there for that to tab into, but he has them. He also, he's got little tabs here that these ankles tab into, but they don't really lock in. They're just, going into the grooves in the plastic there, and it's not really a good solid connection. There's a certain level of haphazardness in this figure that make me think of Classics Galvatron. For those that may not know, back Transformers Classics, when they did Galvatron, they had intended Galvatron to be a much bigger figure, and then they kind of scaled him down, and things went screwy when they did. And part of me feels like there's a little bit of that in here. And overall, like if you're looking from the knees up, this is all fairly accurate to his animation model, with the exception of the big gap there, and then, of course, all the hinges and tabs and tab slot connections. But then you get to the knees on down, and that is not even remotely cartoon accurate. It's very rounded when it should be square. And obviously, the purple that comes down the side of the legs, they just have it as this big chunk of crud here, which is to incorporate a gimmick. And it's arguably a very cool gimmick. It is a very cool gimmick, but it's a cool gimmick that overall hurts the figure. And that's not the first time we've seen that in Transformers. And then the arms are also very wrong. He should have thicker forearms with a pad that goes over the backs of the hands here. They do have his little tattoo, though. So, there's that. And the proportions on him are a little bit weird. So, just right out the gate, let's go ahead and compare him to the Siege Astrotrain. Now, when Siege Astrotrain came out, the big complaint that most people had was his size, because without the little boot extensions that he came with, he's pretty small. Here, we've got a bigger, taller Astrotrain. You can see, this Astrotrain basically comes up to his chest. And of course, the other big complaint was the really terrible paint that's supposed to be battle damage paint. And, when we first heard that there was a completely new mold coming out for Astrotrain, some of us were like, oh, cool. Partially because you may not be able to tell from the camera, but this is one of those figures that yellows really badly, and all of his gray plastic is yellowing. You can kind of sort of see here how this has a yellowish tint, and then this, which is just paint, is a nice gray. But yeah, he comes off kind of lanky with short, gimpy arms, which I think is on purpose. And the reason I think is on purpose is because he does have a feature here where you can bring up the tail fin, split it open, and have your vintage Astrotrain toy look here. And that's where it kind of dawned on me. You look at your vintage Astrotrain. So here's another comparison. G1 Astrotrain. You see something in common here. Sort of an elongated body with very long legs and short, stumpy arms. This is G1 toy Astrotrain, not Studio Series animated Astrotrain. That's really what this is. And once you realize it with the proportions and everything, it completely makes sense. I don't think this was originally intended to be a Studio Series Astrotrain. I think he got shoehorned into being Studio Series Astrotrain. Just one more comparison, since we've kind of already been doing comparisons. Here is the Classics Astrotrain, which is still my favorite modern Astrotrain. Now, for articulation, we do have a ball joint at the head. You don't get a whole lot of movement there, but you get enough. There is a groove in the back of the head that lines up with this tab back here. That's for transformation, and it does kind of hinder the rotation a little bit if you're, planning on twisting his head all the way around. Here at the shoulders, we do have the universal joints, but thanks to the way these are engineered with these tabs right here, that's as far out as you're getting there. We do have a bicep swivel, which is very tight on mine. And we do also have dedicated double jointed elbows. The way these snap into place and form a perfect square kind of makes me think that, again, there was a different intent here for the figure. I do think maybe he was meant to be bigger and transform slightly differently. He does have opening and closing fingers. The fingers are all one piece, and he does have a hand rotation right there. We do have a waist rotation, but it does get hindered by the backpack. Oh, also, there's technically a full 360 here, but it gets hindered by the backpack. We do have hip skirts that do get up and out of the way, and we have universal joints that go all the way forward. They can go all the way back, but all of this back here stops them from doing that. We do also have full splits, thigh swivel, ratcheted knees, very tight ratcheted knees, hollow bits right there. Never fun to see that. Then, of course, thanks to the transformation, we do get a little back and forth on the feet as well as ankle pivot. Now, overall, I think it's a very good looking figure outside of, all the panel lining and hinges and whatnot. And I think it's also a very solid feeling figure for the most part. The kibble here is very easy to knock off. These do not really snap into place, and so they're very easy to flop around. And obviously, if you want to go for the G1 toy look, well, much like the G1 toy, you're going to have a great big gaping hole in his abdomen there. Now, of course, he does have these sculpted 5mm holes there in his hands, so he can hold his guns quite nicely. We do also have ports back here, so if you want to stow the gun, you can stow the guns back there. He also has one 5mm port right there if you wanted to store something underneath. All right, so let's go into train mode first, and then we'll go into shuttle mode. So for transformation, we'll go ahead and close these up. We're going to go ahead and rotate the arms this way, and then rotate the hands back this way. Then we will go ahead and lift these panels up and fold those into place to make the weird looking chest that all the pictures had in the beginning. And then we'll just go ahead and push on the backpack a little bit, and that should loosen up that head a little bit. It's not a very secure tab in where this tabs into. This whole panel just kind of slots into these tabs, and they're not locking tabs, they're just little friction tabs, and that's as far down as it goes. So it's not exactly the best connection. And we'll just go ahead and tab that in just like so, and you can just let that whole backpack hang loose. Then this whole chest panel will rotate up like so, and then we will rotate the arms around like so, and there's these tabs on his crotch there, and they will just sort of loosely groove into these slots right there. Then you're going to take the fin, and you see these little grooves here on his hands. Those are so the fin can sort of tab into them there, and then push these down to tab in those tabs into the slots right there. Now for the feet, you just fold these up until they sort of snap into place, just like that. You can go ahead and tab the legs together like so. And then here, if this hasn't come loose, go ahead and pull this down. And you can see, there's those ratcheted knees right there. You actually want to tilt this and snap it until you get to this orientation, and just sort of straighten it up to where this is parallel with the flap right there, just like that. Then we are going to take this and straighten it all out and rotate it this way, just like so. And then we're going to take this whole gray piece here and untab it and accordion it this way and snap it into place right there, exposing the spaceship nose cone there. And we'll take these panels here and rotate them down. They're going to tab into a couple of spots. So on the gray piece on the inside, there's a little tab that's actually going to tab into the side of the arms. Then this tab here is going to go into this slot right there. And then this tab right here is going to go into a little slot right there on the inside. It can be a little weird and finicky to get that lined up since everything's still moving. But once you do, it becomes pretty solid and holds into place fairly well. Then we'll go ahead and flip the figure over, rotate this whole panel around. Now do be careful because there's a hinge here, and then this piece here is on a hinge, double hinge, and this is the only part of it that's pinned in. The rest of these are just frictioned into place, and they are very easy to pop off when messing around with this. Anyway, we're just going to lay this down like so. Fold in these gray flaps, and you'll expose a little tab slot right there. And go ahead and straighten out these wings and start folding them down at this hinge. So these are on a double hinge. For robot mode, you're going to snap it back just like so at this hinge, which it doesn't want to focus on. And then for train mode, you want to straighten that up there and then bend it at that inner hinge. And that will give you clearance to untab this from right here. These pieces tab into that little hook right there. You want to untab this, rotate this flap down, and then rotate this entire panel around until it lines up right there. Then you can tab into that slot there on the wings, and then here on the sides, there's a little tab right in there, and a tab on the gray bit that tabs into the gray bit right there. Says as he's fumbling with this stuff, just like so. Then last but not least, you'll take the big back chunk right here, and there's these two tabs sticking off of the wings that are going to tab into slots right there. And then when all is said and done, there you have Astrotrain in his train mode. And it is arguably a better looking train mode than what we got before. There is elements of the actual Astrotrain G1 train, this should be a little bit more rounded, but this is correct. And this is kind of emulating the rig that he has right here, but not really doing it very well. And then it just sort of does the round bit, but then goes into a much bigger, longer square chunk, which the G1 toy did as well. So, I mean, the G1 toy was very close to his animation model, but, there's some liberties taken. Now, again, all of the chunks that he had on him was to incorporate this gimmick, which does the QQ. It does the QQ. Anyway, and it's a cool gimmick. It is a very cool gimmick. But as I said, it creates those extra chunks that kind of hurt the figure overall. We also have the opening back door that leads to a big flat panel with some sculpted detail for some reason, and a window. I think this would have been a useful place to put on just paint that whole thing black. I think that would look better. But overall, it's a very good train mode, all things considered. It's just not a show accurate train mode. Now, of course, we have the effect piece, and you've got a tab hole here, and you also have a tab hole here, but you have a tab hole back here, and you want to just plug that in there, and then plug that back tab in there, and boom, you have the full effect of him chugging along. And of course, if you want to get him gearing up to transform into his spaceship mode, you can tab these back onto the thrusters back here, just like so. And now he's super chugging. And yeah, I mean, the transformation to the train mode, with the exception of the big chunk that just sort of flops around, is fairly intuitive, and it's kind of fun. And the train mode is solid, and it looks really good. I do think that the train mode is absolutely an upgrade from what came before, even if the robot mode really isn't. So yeah, this is really cool. I do dig this. Now, as you saw, I had left the gun on him on the other side. So you can, in fact, leave the guns on him when you're transforming from his different vehicle modes. And they can just port right here on the side. And there you go. Now, for comparison, here he is with the G1 Astrotrain. And, I got paint chipping on him. That's pretty common, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, as far as what the animation model looked like, this was a little bit closer. But, the rounded bit went way farther back on that original animation model, whereas here, it's a little bit rounded bit, and then once again goes to a square bit, and you have this curved little bit right there. And again, it feels more like it's homaging the G1 toy than it is homaging his cartoon counterpart, which is very interesting. And again, I mentioned there were certain things that were a little haphazard and things that didn't seem to add up. And these parts here are another one of those. So you've got a tab slot right here that tabs into that tab, except it really doesn't tab into that tab. It just sort of mostly barely touches it because, these panels stick off from the side, almost like this was originally intended to slide in or something, but they didn't make it do that. And again, here he is now with the Siege Astrotrain, which they tried. they tried. Like from the front, it's a very realistic looking train, but not Astrotrain's train. And then the rest of it is a mix of a sci-fi train and a real train. So yeah, there's no denying that when it comes down to the three modes, I do think this still has the better robot mode, but the train mode here is clearly inferior to the new one. And once again, my personal favorite modern Astrotrain, the Classics Astrotrain, which is a much longer but much smaller, bullet train. Now to get him into his space shuttle mode, we'll go ahead and take this off. This basically is useless for everything other than the train mode. So we'll go ahead and untab this. Lift that up, go ahead and untab these. That should automatically untab all of this from there. And then lift that up and do the same thing here on the other side. Now we're going to put these back where we had them. So you want to fold this over just like that and rotate this around and rotate it up against this tab hook area right there. You can kind of see a little hook going out right there, and this will tab into position just like so. And once again, that's just going to hang loose for right now. All right, so then we're going to come over here, and you want to go ahead and the easiest way to do this is just to untab the feet and pull these forward so you can get your hands on these wheels, and you're going to extend these down and around just like so. Snap them into place, and then snap the feet back into position. You want to go ahead and untab this panel just like so, and then you're going to snap this down, this whole front piece down, just like so. Then you rotate these panels, and now these tab slots here are going to slot into these little posts right there, and then the gray piece is going to tab in right there. You see that little spot right there, and then this little square hole is going to slot into this little square tab right there on top of the arms. Now, where things become finicky is when you're dealing with this piece that moves, and it likes to move, and you need to make sure that it doesn't move because you need it to tuck in right there. Otherwise, this is not going to tab in correctly. Now, for the tail fin, this is actually kind of difficult to pull out. You kind of need like a spudger or something, thin and long and hard, and don't take that the wrong way, to sort of push in on this, which will force that tail fin out. Then once you get it out, just lift this up and lift it back, and you can see this little notch right there. You want to keep that exposed. You want to rotate this to where it's like this. Go ahead and fold these out. And this is going to sandwich down this thick peg with the hole in it. It's going to go into this little port right there, just like so. And then you're going to take this whole piece here, and it's going to tab into these tabs right there. But you also need to get this square peg into that slot right there. Just like so. And there you have him in his shuttle mode. And he does have rolling wheels, so he rolls pretty well. He's got the wheels here on the wings. He's got this wheel right there, and of course the two wheels that we pulled out right there. And so he does roll fairly well in this mode. And I do think this is a good looking space shuttle, all things considered. I mean, you do have a lot of junk here in the trunk and the big hole right there, but I think it's a little bit more cohesive than what's come before. But it's even less accurate to Astrotrain's actual shuttle mode than what's come before. Again, because his legs were rounded instead of squared, and then instead of having sort of like two boxes interlocking with each other, where one kind of angles up and goes into a straight line, and the other one goes over it, you have this weird zigzag thing. And also, these tabs here from where the ankles tabbed in, where those tab in, and then the feet that are sitting right here, it makes him look like he's got a big fat bottom lip with buck teeth. Yeah. So yes, it's a better shuttle mode, but it's wrong. It's wrong. And also, these wings, because they're double jointed and tolerances are what they are, these don't really like to stay flat and in line with each other. And the only thing really holding this in is that one post and then these tabs up there, which also makes it pretty easy to knock this whole thing loose. Once again, here he is with G1 Astrotrain. And yeah, so you see how that panel forms a line at an angle, and then you get these panels which form his legs, and it makes the box that goes around the shuttle. That's how his shuttle mode's supposed to look. It's even right here on the box. And here he is with Siege Astrotrain, which actually comes a little bit longer of a shuttle, but a little bit shorter height-wise. But yeah, so, I mean, they're both not super cohesive in the back end, but this one definitely is a little bit more cohesive than this one, with all of its gaps that desperately needed gap fillers of some kind, and the big gaping hole right here, which, and he also has a big gaping hole. But there's no denying that this is more accurate to Astrotrain's design, even though it's still not quite right. Because, again, you got the box, the angles, making more of a box around the front of the space shuttle. And one more time with Classics Astrotrain, who is still my favorite Astrotrain of the modern era. Yes, he's got bits of bullet train on the side, but, it works. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it for Studio Series Astrotrain. So, I think he's a fine figure. I think he's a solid figure. He's enjoyable to mess with. But it's very clear that the design intent here, or the design elements here, are very different than what's come out in Studio Series thus far. It does not feel like it was intended to be a Studio Series figure, and maybe got sort of shoehorned and redesigned at the last minute to be a Studio Series Astrotrain. Again, there's a lot of elements that feel more like he was intended to homage that vintage toy with a new take, as opposed to being, a cartoon representation of Astrotrain. So that does beg a question. Is he worth it? He's a good figure. He's decent. He's okay. But is decent and okay worth $60, which is where we're sitting at now? And honestly, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. With the economy going the way it is, really can't afford to be buying things on a whim because we don't think it's as bad as we thought it was. We absolutely have to be a lot more picky and choosy. And Transformers have always been an expensive toy hobby. When it comes to Transformers, they have been expensive since day one in 1983. So this really does end up feeling like a letdown when it shouldn't. It's a good figure, but it's not better than what's come before. So if you do already have the Siege Astrotrain and you're fine with him, I think robot mode, he may be shorter than everybody else, but he is a great representation of the character and he fits in well on the shelf. If you don't have Astrotrain and you want to pick up an Astrotrain, maybe wait to see if this guy goes on clearance. It seems like a lot of people online are not happy with this figure, and so I have the feeling it kind of seems like he may not be made in as much quantity as some of the other figures, but I have a feeling that he will become easy to get and will probably be a figure that you'll find at Ollie's or at Big Lots or, um, all the other usual suspects for a discount. So if you have been thinking about it and you're not sure if you want to spend the money, maybe wait. I know that's a crapshoot these days. I waited on getting the Nemesis and regretted it for that very same reason. Um, but I do regret spending the money on this guy, even though he is, again, a decent figure, which is a sad feeling to have for a studio series in today's day and age. But again, I did pick this guy up at Target. He is showing up in store shelves. I think the pre-orders are shipping for him now as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for me, guys. Y'all have a good one.